Ellie Benton always dreamed of a life filled with love, luxury, and deep connections. Growing up in a small southern town, she was enchanted by romantic stories, especially her grandmother's tales of Charleston's charm. After meeting her husband, Will, Ellie felt she was living the life she had always imagined. Marrying Will marked the start of her own romantic journey. They built a comfortable life, traveling together and deepening their bond through shared experiences. Despite appearances, cracks in their marriage were starting to show. One September Friday, a week before their 10th anniversary, Ellie was preparing a special dinner in their coastal cottage. She grilled amberjack with fresh radishes and basil, served with southern grains and homemade bread, and paired it with a 2010 Bordeaux Sauvignon Blanc. She planned to end the night with strawberries and cream after a beach walk with Will. Ellie had discovered, through Will's best friend and business partner Corey Parker, that Will was planning a surprise Caribbean cruise for their anniversary. It included horseback riding on the beach, one of Ellie's favorite activities. Will and Corey met in college at Duke University, where they both studied business and joined the Sigma Chi fraternity. After graduating, they started a technology company that helps high school students choose colleges. The company broke even after 3 years, and by year 12, they each earned $250,000 annually after taxes. They used market research to improve their product and optimize services. Young and ambitious, Will and Corey weren't driven by money, but once they started earning, they agreed it was better to have it. Though not yet wealthy, they were on their way. Their goal was to sell their company to a major tech firm within 3 years, and then tackle a new challenge. Will met Ellie in Charlotte, North Carolina, after starting his company with Corey. Ellie, a Sweetbriar College graduate who specialized in equine studies, dreamed of owning a horse farm. She worked on a farm near Charlotte where she met Will during a team horseback ride. Will, who knew little about horses, fell for Ellie instantly. She found him attractive and charming, and after a few days, Will texted her. They soon went for coffee, and 11 months later, they were married. Their honeymoon in Maroon Bells, Colorado, was a mix of outdoor adventures and relaxing nights at the St. Regis, where Ellie teased Will for his soreness from the activities. Their early sex life was a learning experience, as both were new to exploring their desires together. By the 3rd year of marriage, they had settled into a comfortable routine, with Ellie jokingly calling Will a writer after a rough session. Will, playing along, teased back about taming her, which led to more playful intimacy. Corey, on the other hand, was a womanizer. Ellie introduced him to friends, but after a few short-lived relationships, she kept her distance from his dating life, finding his approach immature. While Will was a bit shorter with white hair and blue eyes, Corey, tall with dark hair and brown eyes, enjoyed the chase, but often lost interest after the first encounter. Ellie regularly scolded him for his behavior. "Corey, you can't just sleep with them and move on," Ellie said, clearly annoyed. "Of course I can, Al," he replied playfully. "I don't promise love and they're all adults. Besides, if I meet someone like you, I might stick around." Turning to Will, Corey added, "Don't drag me into this, brother." Will, reading Ellie's mood, wisely responded, "I may not be pretty, but I'm no fool." A week before their anniversary trip, Ellie prepared a romantic dinner, her passion for horseback riding igniting her sexual energy. She had just returned from riding at Seabrook Island and decided to cook barefoot in a short sundress. As a Mustang pulled up, she felt a rush of excitement. Corey entered, unable to resist her appearance. "No lingerie," he whispered, full of lust. "Damn you, Corey," she said teasingly. "Go shower, dinner's ready in 5 minutes, and later I'll give you the best dessert of your life." 9 months earlier, Corey had started his pursuit of Ellie. He often annoyed her, but saw it as part of the challenge. Despite introducing him to her single friends, Ellie grew frustrated when Corey discarded them after brief flings. For Corey, though, it was all part of his plan. He used these interactions to learn about Ellie through her friends, gathering information to slowly seduce her. Corey didn't intend to harm Will, his longtime friend and business partner. He wasn't trying to outdo him, but saw seducing Ellie as a challenge. He believed he could win her over, enjoy the affair briefly, and then end it, convincing Ellie to stay loyal to Will. His goal was for everyone to come out ahead, with Will never finding out. For years, Corey had pushed Ellie, teasing and apologizing. She often complained about him to Will, but Corey's charm and small, thoughtful gestures eventually softened her. When she hugged him and said, "I still hate your damn in the A, but you can be so sweet," he knew he was back in her good graces. It was the end of January when Corey finally made his breakthrough. Just before Christmas, he had met Ellie's stablemate, Joe, a tall, lively redhead with a wild personality. Their chemistry was undeniable, and they had sex just 30 minutes after their first kiss on New Year's Eve. After leaving the party, they headed to Corey's apartment, where their night of passion continued into the next morning. Though Corey enjoyed being with Joe, his focus remained on Ellie. Joe was just a means to an end. He craved Ellie and knew that with persistence, he could have her. His imagination often wandered to how it would play out. On January 23rd, Corey was at Will and Ellie's house to watch Sunday Night Football. He and Will were in the office drinking beer, while Ellie's phone rang during the second quarter of the AFC game. She answered, and they overheard the conversation. "Hey, Joe, what's up?" "No way." "He did not do that, Joe. Calm down and tell me what happened." Suddenly, they heard a loud noise, and Ellie stomped out of the room, furious. "That damn bastard. I'm going to kick his in the A," she shouted before slamming the door. Will gave Corey a knowing look. "Did you break her heart again?" "Sorry, Will," Corey said. "Joe just wasn't for me. I couldn't string her along." "When are you going to grow up? Every time you break up with one of Ellie's friends, she's mad at you, and I'm the one who pays for it. I get no Zex for a week." "Yeah, I know, man. I need to stop messing around before Ellie really liquidates me." "Well, I don't have a Colt, but I can't promise she won't buy one." A few minutes later, Ellie stormed out of the bedroom and confronted Corey. "You're such an a-hole, Parker," she yelled, using his last name, which he knew meant trouble. "Al, I'm sorry. Joe's a great girl, but—" "Shut up, Corey," Ellie screamed, grabbing a pillow and hitting him with it. "You always use them and toss them aside. Why, Corey? What's wrong with you?" Corey tried to avoid her blows by moving around the couch, but the hits, though from a pillow, were strong. He quickly grabbed his jacket and headed for the door. "You're acting crazy, Ellie. I'm sorry I hurt Joe, but I think I should leave. We can talk when you've calmed down." "Calm down?" she shouted, following him. "You sleep with my friends and you think I should calm down?" She threw the pillow as Corey closed the door, narrowly missing him. Still furious, Ellie opened the door again and chased Corey down the sidewalk. Will, deciding not to get involved, remained on the couch, watching football. "I'm not done with you, Corey Parker! Get back here!" Ellie screamed, as she followed him to his car, parked out front and hidden from view by a hedge. They were alone. Corey raised his hands in surrender. "Okay, Al, hold on a minute," he said, softening his tone. "It's 28 degrees, and you're out here barefoot in just a t-shirt. You should go inside before you freeze." Her teeth were chattering, but she wasn't backing down. "To hell with that, Parker." Then she started crying again. "Why, Corey? Why do you treat my girlfriends and every other woman like this? What happened to you?" This was the moment Corey had been waiting for. Putting on his best sympathetic look, he replied, "Do you really want to know, Ellie? Are you sure? Because once I say it, there's no turning back." Ellie was surprised by his sudden vulnerability. She'd always seen him as shallow, but now she glimpsed a deeper side. "Yes, Corey, tell me." "It's you, Ellie. You're the reason I can't stay with anyone. I know you're married, and to my best friend no less. But whenever I'm with someone else, I only see your face. You're the one I want to be with. I'm sorry, but I'm crazy about you." "But Corey, we can't. I mean, I'm flattered, and I care about you too, but we can't. This isn't right." There's a fine line between anger and passion, and Corey knew he was about to cross it with her. He didn't let her finish. Grabbing her with strong hands, he kissed her deeply, one hand on her head and the other around her waist. This was the moment of truth. She would either push him away or respond. At first, she didn't resist, but didn't fully give in either. After a few moments, her weak protest turned into a soft moan, and she kissed him back. Ellie wrapped her arms around his neck, melting into the embrace. Their tongues intertwined, driven by passion, anger, and desire. It lasted over a minute, an intense mix of emotions swirling between them. When they finally broke the kiss, they still held on to each other. "Oh God, what have I done?" Ellie whispered, pulling back slightly. Corey didn't respond. He knew she wasn't asking him. Instead, he kissed her again, his hands now exploring her body. She didn't stop him, pressing closer and reaching below his waist. After a few more heated moments, she pulled away. "Corey, please, I can't do this. Not here. Not now." The fact that she didn't say never was telling. Corey realized he had gotten as far as he could for now. "Ellie, I won't say I'm sorry because I'm not. I don't want to hurt my friend. But that doesn't mean I don't want to be with you. This could be our secret. I'm not the marrying type, and I won't steal you from him. But don't you want to let go and enjoy this? The pleasure it could bring?" "But Will—" Ellie started. "We can keep this from him. We both know this won't last forever. Intense things burn out quickly. Maybe a few months, maybe a year. But we'll always have the memories of an incredible connection with each other. He could tell she was starting to waver. I know it would be incredible, Corey, but how can we be sure it won't blow up and ruin my marriage? Will is the person I want to spend my life with. People get caught because they're careless. We're not like that. I'm confident we can do this without anyone getting hurt. No, I don't think so, she said, walking quickly to her car. She was determined not to let it happen, but as Corey watched her leave, he wasn't discouraged. He knew she had crossed a line, and there was no going back. It might take time, but he'd help her take the next steps. After a few moments, he made his way back to the office with Will's coffee, ready to lie about Ellie scolding him. The next steps came sooner than expected. Within a week, Will had to travel to Winston-Salem to meet some technicians they were recruiting. Knowing she'd have the evening to herself, Ellie went horseback riding after work, returning home chilled from the February cold. After a shower, she felt a wave of desire. She wrapped herself in a terry robe and settled by the fireplace with a glass of wine. Will called to check in, saying he'd be home by lunchtime the next day. Ellie teased him as she caressed herself, thinking, I want to make love tonight. No, I want to have sex tonight. 10 minutes later, there was a knock at the back door. Startled, Ellie turned to see Corey Parker standing there, smiling, holding a bottle of 2012 Camus, a 40th anniversary edition wine. Something clicked, and without hesitation, she threw open the door and rushed into his arms, kissing him as if it were the last kiss she'd ever give. There was no one around on that cold February night. Corey put on Will's jacket and cap, just in case anyone saw him, but no one did. He scooped Ellie up, slinging her over his shoulder, and carried her upstairs to the Bentons' marital bed. I didn't plan to take her here, but she's not stopping me, Corey thought as he tossed her onto the bed, making it clear he had come to claim what he wanted. Ellie didn't resist. Corey was in excellent shape, just like Will. Both worked out regularly, but what captivated Ellie wasn't his physique. It was his eyes, burning with raw lust. She met his gaze, filled with the same primal desire. What are you going to do, Parker? You should leave right now. You're not the man for me. You may charm my girlfriends with your eyes, but not me. I'm not impressed. Get out of my bedroom now. Her defiance only fueled him, and he loved it. Which, you know you want it, he growled, grabbing the laces of her robe and untying it. She stood up and started pushing him toward the door, but he quickly grabbed her hands, pinned them above her head, and pressed her against the wall. He kissed her deeply, growling, and they had wild, animalistic sex. Afterward, she ran her hand over his face. You're a bad, bad man, Corey Parker. I can't believe what you did to me. Maybe you should ask me to leave, he replied with a smile. Hell no, she said. I want you to take me in the shower after we rest and clean your dirty little girl. Then we can start again if you think you can handle it. A few minutes later, he obliged. They showered, dried off, and returned to bed. After a couple of hours and another shower, they cuddled and drifted off to sleep. Before Ellie fell asleep, she finally thought of Will. Corey, thinking ahead, set his phone alarm for 6:30 a.m. He let her sleep while he made coffee, considering how careful they'd need to be in the coming months. He started wondering if a short affair would be enough. Ellie was an incredible lover, pushing him in ways no other woman had. He enjoyed her submissiveness, but was equally drawn to her ability to challenge him. Ellie woke to the smell of fresh coffee and saw Corey smiling at her. After heading to the bathroom, they sat quietly, sipping coffee together. Once they finished their cups, they moved to the kitchen for more. But before she could enjoy her coffee, Ellie found herself bent over the kitchen table, experiencing another round of Corey's passion. 2 hours later, the bed linens were washed, and Corey was in the office. Will had just gotten into his car, heading home to his loving wife. Ellie knew Will would want to make love that evening, and in a strange way, she wanted him to. She wanted him to take her back. She knew she would continue her affair with Corey, but somehow convinced herself she could keep them separate and enjoy both. That morning, she and Corey talked about being extra careful. She believed it could work until they tired of the affair and she returned to being a faithful wife. The word betrayal never entered her mind. Like most people, she considered herself a good person. What she was doing didn't seem right, but she refused to see it as truly wrong. I love Will, and I'll never stop, Ellie thought to herself. She didn't dwell on how she could balance love, fidelity, and an affair with her husband's business partner. That's the nature of betrayal. You can't think about it too much. If you do, you start to see the cracks in your reasoning and realize the moral error. So, like many others, Ellie just decided it was fine and kept going. For the next 8 months, she and Corey met at least once a week, sometimes in bed, in the car, on the couch, under the moonlight, in the park, and even in a remote corner of the Lowe's Motor Speedway parking lot. They never met in the same place twice, and always at times when they wouldn't be noticed. Every third meeting, Corey arranged a hotel stay in a nearby town, writing it off as a business expense. Ellie told Will she was checking out horses or researching competing stables. Following Corey's guidance, Ellie continued to love her husband as usual. It wasn't hard for her. She genuinely enjoyed it. Will was too trusting of both of them and never suspected anything. When Will told Corey in August that he was planning a surprise 10th anniversary Caribbean cruise in September, Corey started thinking about arranging one more weekend away with Ellie before then. He knew she was getting nervous about the risks they were taking. As expected, his desire for her hadn't waned, but he was also determined to keep Will from ever finding out. Maybe this would be their last meeting. Back in Charleston, Corey kissed Ellie again before heading to the outdoor shower near the master bedroom, knowing their night would be unforgettable. If either felt even a hint of guilt for their deceit, they didn't mention it. "Dinner can wait a few minutes," she whispered in his ear. Her phone rang, but she ignored it, which turned out to be one of the biggest mistakes of her life. Every cheater slips up eventually. Meanwhile, 3 hours away in Charleston, an unsuspecting Will Benton was enjoying Chinese takeout when his phone rang. The area code was 843. Given his work, Will was familiar with many area codes in the southeastern U.S. Charleston, he thought. He didn't get business calls on his personal phone and couldn't think of any friends from the area. "Hello? Hello, this is Gemma Hartnell. I'm trying to reach Ellie Benton." "Well, you're close. This is her husband, Will. Is there something I can help you with?" "I'm sorry to disturb you, Mr. Benton, but Mrs. Benton was riding with us at Seabrook today, and it seems she dropped her purse. I don't think she's noticed yet, or she would have come back for it. We tried calling her, but she didn't answer. So I found your number in her wallet and thought I'd try reaching you." Will's heart sank as he processed what he heard. "You said Ellie Benton, right?" "Yes, sir." "Can you confirm her address from her driver's license?" "Sure. One moment. 1810 Falling Leaf Drive." "That's our address, but there must be some mistake. Ellie's at a horse show in Lexington, Kentucky this weekend." Gemma hesitated, unsure of what she had stumbled into. "I see, sir. If you talk to her, can you let her know her wallet is here at Seabrook Stables?" Yes, of course," Will stammered, trying to understand the situation. "I'll tell her. Thank you." Will hung up and immediately went to his laptop to check the travel itinerary Ellie had given him. She had left early that morning and was supposed to return Sunday evening. At the top of the page, he read, "Champagne Run Jumper Show, Lexington, Kentucky, 9.109.12. This was the weekend, but apparently Ellie wasn't there. What was she doing in Charleston or on Kiowa Island? The question lingered, unanswered. Why would she lie about this? There had to be a reasonable explanation. Will was methodical and forced himself to sit down and consider all the possibilities. Maybe she was planning a surprise for them later in the fall, but that could easily be done online. Perhaps she was preparing something special for their anniversary, though he had already hinted about his own surprise. Could there be another horse show in Charleston this weekend? Had she changed her plans at the last minute to avoid seeming frivolous? He quickly searched the Charleston Visitors website for anything related to horses. Nothing. Maybe she was with her sorority sisters and hadn't wanted to mention it? None of these thoughts made sense. Then, reluctantly, he wrote down the last thing he didn't want to consider but couldn't ignore. Is she cheating? He felt a lump in his throat and a knot in his stomach. There were no other reasonable explanations. He thought he had married the most amazing woman. Beautiful, intelligent, and gifted. A woman he planned to spend his life with. A faithful woman. What should he do? He needed to think and process, but he also needed to calm down. He needed to ground himself. So he turned to the one person he thought could help. Corey. He began to press the speed dial for button 2 when he suddenly stopped. Oh crap, he thought as he started putting together the pieces he desperately hoped weren't true. Corey went to Florida to visit his parents this weekend, right? He scrolled through his contacts until he found Marty Parker's number and pressed call. Will, what an honor. I hope you and my son are still conquering the world. Hey Marty, I'm trying to reach Corey. His cell isn't answering, he lied. But he mentioned he'd be with you and Vera this weekend. It's not urgent, just a question. Is he nearby? I think you're mistaken, Will, Marty replied. Corey said he'd be in Hilton Head with a couple of fraternity brothers this weekend. Want me to try to reach him? Will fought to keep his composure. Don't worry, Marty. I probably mixed up the weekends. I left him a message. He'll likely call back. "Hello, Vera," he barely managed to say before hanging up. "This can't be happening," Will desperately tried to reason. Not his best friend and his wife. Please don't let this be true. He sat there for over an hour, struggling to breathe normally and think clearly. What should he do? Get on a plane and search for them? This is insane. He had no idea where they might be staying together. Should he ignore it until Sunday evening and ask for an explanation when Ellie returns? That wouldn't work because if she lied, she would just cover her tracks. He was sure she would probably have the Lexington hotel bill to back up her story. Ellie wasn't foolish. An hour later, he was still no closer to a decision, so he Googled divorce laws in North Carolina. North Carolina was a no-fault divorce state, and since they had no children, child support was off the table. However, alimony was another concern. Would she want half of his share of the company? If so, she and Corey would hold the majority and could oust him. Was this their plan all along? He kept reading and noticed, in bold print under Chapter 50 of the law, the grounds for divorce. 2 words: commits adultery. But a significant amount of evidence was required. If she was cheating on him with Corey, all he had was a phone call from a stable employee. One thing became clear. If Ellie and Corey were involved, he was doomed. He could have walked away from the money. It wasn't that important to him. He was skilled and had helped build a successful company. He could easily find a high-paying job elsewhere or even start his own business. But Will also knew he couldn't pretend to be a loving husband for months while a private investigator uncovered the truth. It was late Friday night when he finally admitted he was just going in circles with his thoughts. He took 3 Tylenol PM tablets, set his alarm for 8 a.m., and went to bed. After 30 minutes of tears, the medication began to kick in. Meanwhile, in Charleston, it was past midnight when Corey and Ellie sat on the screened-in porch after a wonderful dinner, a moonlit walk on the beach, and 2 hours of passionate sex. The first hour had been rough, as if both partners needed to dominate one another. After their walk, Ellie ran a bath in a deep vintage clawfoot tub and told Corey to wait for her in the king-sized 4-poster bed. "No more waiting, witch," he growled, heading straight for the tub. Ellie would never let Will treat her like that, but Corey's relentless desire excited her. She loved when he took control and that he wanted her more than anyone else. Knowing he had other women only added to her twisted pride. Moments later, they moved to the bedroom. 15 minutes later, they were back on the porch, quietly talking in the afterglow. Ellie wore very short shorts and a t-shirt that barely covered her, while Corey sat beside her in loose Nike shorts. Her legs rested on his lap as he massaged her feet and calves. "What are we doing, Corey?" "What do you mean, baby?" "I think you know exactly what we did," she snapped. "Don't be smart," he replied, playfully hitting her shoulder. "Why are we doing this? We've been together for over 8 months. You have more girls than you want, and I have a husband whom I love." The last words caught in her throat. She truly felt a deep love for her husband, but how could she express that with a straight face, given where she was and what she was doing? Corey knew better than to tease her about her feelings for Will. In truth, he also felt a twinge of guilt whenever she mentioned his name. He had known Will for nearly 7 years longer than she had. They spent 8 to 10 hours every day in each other's offices, planning, revising, pushing, creating, and developing. With no siblings of his own, Will was like a brother to Corey. "I don't know, Ellie, I just can't keep my mind or hands off you. I love Will too, but you intrigue me and I have to have you." "Maybe you just can't accept that Will has something you don't," Ellie mused. "Maybe we enjoy this weekend and then Will and I leave for a cruise on Tuesday. He must never suspect anything." "You drive me crazy and I love Zex," Corey replied. "But I want to live with Will as my husband and hopefully the father of our children soon." "I hope you're not suggesting this weekend will be our last," Corey challenged. "I'm not sure, but no," she admitted. "I don't think I can give up your incredible sexual skills overnight." "Don't get cocky, stud," she teased. "But you always make me see stars when we have Zex," she conceded. "It's too late to tell me not to be arrogant," Corey said, standing up and picking her up to carry her to bed. Maybe this wouldn't be their last encounter, he thought for a moment before they indulged in each other again. At 8 a.m. sharp, Will Benton woke up, groggy from too many sleeping pills. He took a cold shower to clear his mind and brewed a pot of coffee. The next half hour was spent finalizing a plan he had been developing. 5 minutes later, he was dialing the after-hours number for Sterling Private Investigators in Charleston, South Carolina. The operator took his information and promised that one of their highly trained professionals would return his call within 30 minutes. Private investigators earn their keep by what they uncover, so the return call came in under 10 minutes. "Mr. Benton, this is Amanda Cunningham. How can I assist you?" Will explained everything. His wife, Ellie Benton, claimed she was going to Lexington for the weekend, but somehow she had dropped her wallet at the stables on Kiowa Island. He suspected she was with her lover, his business partner, Corey Parker. He had no idea where they were staying, but assumed it was a private house or cottage, secluded enough for discretion. They would likely be there until tomorrow, so time was of the essence. He needed undeniable evidence. Photos, videos, audio recordings, anything. Money wasn't an issue. Amanda chuckled silently at that last point. Don't worry, Mr. Benton. Once we receive your 50% deposit, our team will locate them if they're here and find out exactly what they're doing. We don't call ourselves highly trained professionals just for fun. Our small firm of 5 has over 30 years of combined experience in surveillance, espionage, and covert operations. I'll know their whereabouts within the hour. They spent another 15 minutes discussing the details. Will wanted a bit more information before sending the $6,000 deposit. Amanda's responses were clear and convincing. Will received the transfer details, made the electronic payment, and they agreed she would call him by noon with an update. At the same time, Ellie checked her voicemails from the previous night. She realized she had forgotten to call Will to check on him. She did so from the Mustang as Corey drove them back to Kiowa to retrieve her wallet. The call went straight to voicemail, so she left Will a sweet, loving, yet completely misleading message about the horses and the terrible breakfast at the North Lexington Courtyard Marriott. She assured him she was looking forward to their 10th anniversary celebration next week. When they arrived at Seabrook, Ellie hurried into the office to get her wallet. Since Gemma wasn't working that morning, she didn't know about the call Gemma had made to Will the day before. Ellie and Corey decided to shop on King Street and grab lunch at slightly north of Broad. Meanwhile, Will gave Amanda and her team some time to work and contacted Ed Simmons, a longtime family friend and a sharp lawyer. Ed was preparing for a round of golf at Cedarwood Country Club when the call came in. He decided to answer, apologizing to his partners, giving his caddy a generous tip, and heading straight to Will's place. Ed and Will spent the next 90 minutes discussing the details and planning the best course of action. Ed quickly concluded that Ellie was likely cheating, with Corey being the other party involved. Will's phone rang at 11:57 a.m. Amanda was on the line. Ellie is definitely in town, Amanda reported. She went to Seabrook yesterday and was back this morning with a man in a red Mustang convertible to pick up her wallet. The man matches Corey Parker's description. The car was rented from National Car Rental under Mr. Parker's name, with an address listed for a cottage on the northern end of Folly Island, secluded and private. She paused before adding, "They're currently downtown shopping on King Street and just sat down for lunch at Snob. It looks like shrimp and grits, but I can't confirm." Will was shocked by the speed and accuracy of the information. "How the hell did you figure all this out so quickly?" he asked. Before Amanda could answer, Ed interrupted. "Mrs. Cunningham, this is Ed Simmons, Mr. Benton's lawyer. Would you mind if we recorded this conversation?" "Sure," Amanda replied, "but please call me Amanda." "Thank you, Amanda," Ed continued. "We're officially hiring you on behalf of Mr. Benton. Please send all future invoices to my email. Also, could you confirm the receipt of my client's payment?" "Yes," Amanda said. "One of my assistants is already verifying the transaction. We'll proceed immediately with surveillance and evidence gathering. You'll receive an update by noon tomorrow." Amanda and Ed spent another 15 minutes outlining a plan for further action. Will listened closely, impressed by how well they collaborated. Amanda suggested ideas that Ed accepted, leading them to a solid plan. "Thank you, Amanda," Ed concluded. "You have a lot to accomplish in a short time, so I'll let you get back to work." "Got it," Amanda replied before hanging up. Turning to Will, Ed became serious. "Will, I need to know your ultimate goal here. Do you want to try to salvage the relationship, or are you considering divorce? I hate to put you on the spot, but I need to know the direction we're heading." Will sat in silence for a moment. He wasn't impulsive, but the reality of his situation hit him hard. "I loved her with all my heart, Ed. I trusted her and she betrayed me. My best friend did the same." He shook his head, fighting back tears. "This isn't just a mistake. This is deliberate betrayal, and I can't stand for it. I want them both out of my life, no matter what it costs. I want them to feel the pain I'm feeling right now." Ed reached out and squeezed Will's shoulder. "All right, let's get to work." By Sunday afternoon, Ellie was becoming anxious. She had called Will 5 times, 3 times on Saturday and twice on Sunday morning, but all she got was a polite but brief text. "Busy with the crisis. We'll talk Sunday evening. Enjoy Lexington." She showed the message to Corey and asked him to call Will to find out what was going on. He couldn't know, could he? She asked, panic creeping into her voice. How can I call him, Ellie? Corey responded. He didn't mention any issues at the office. What am I supposed to say? Hey, Will, Ellie and I are in Charleston having Zex, but she thinks there's a business problem, so I'm checking in. Ellie bit her lip. Damn, you're right. I'm not thinking straight. It must be work-related. There's no way he could know. I told him I was visiting my parents this weekend. Maybe he's just trying not to bother me. Yeah, that's probably it, Corey replied, though his voice lacked certainty. Later, they showered together before heading to the airport, but Ellie's thoughts drifted back to Charlotte. Sensing her distraction, Corey didn't push for more intimacy. He smiled to himself, thinking, lots of Zex when we get back and it'll all be fine. Just 3 minutes after they left the cottage, an AT&T van pulled up. 2 workers entered to set up and install surveillance equipment. 30 minutes later, Amanda and her team began reviewing the footage. One of her assistants commented, Damn, they have stamina. Corey dropped Ellie off at the terminal and went to return the rental car. As he did, his father called. What's up, Dad? He asked. Hey, son, just wanted to check in. I hope you're enjoying Hilton Head. Yeah, I'm not a great player, but we played a lot of golf and enjoyed some excellent seafood. Are you and Mom doing okay, Wing? Yes, we're fine. Listen, son, I won't keep you, but Will called me on Friday night looking for you. He thought you were visiting us this weekend. I reminded him you were in Hilton Head, which surprised me because he doesn't usually make mistakes like that. Is everything all right with him? Corey felt a lump in his throat, but tried to sound casual. He's got a lot on his mind right now, Dad. I think he and Ellie want to start a family, and he's a little anxious about being a dad. I'm sure he just mixed up the dates. I still plan to come back in 3 weeks for the weekend. His father seemed satisfied with his response. They chatted a bit more before saying goodbye. Corey decided not to mention this to Ellie. It's probably nothing, and I don't want to stress her out before her flight home. They flew separately just to be safe, and their flights arrived on time. Since Ellie only had a carry-on, she headed straight to her car in the long-term parking lot and drove home. Although she was still nervous, she gradually calmed down and gathered her thoughts during the drive. Traffic was light on Sunday evening, allowing her to reach home quickly. She couldn't wait to see Will and make sure her deception hadn't been discovered. She needed to play the role of a tired wife after a long weekend, but her excitement to see her husband made her want to shower and make love to him. As it turned out, she didn't need to pretend, nor did she get the chance. When she arrived at the house and pressed the garage door remote, she received her first indication that something was wrong. The remote didn't work. Damn batteries, she thought. Then she noticed the house was dark, with only the porch light on. She walked up to the front door with her rolling suitcase. As she got closer, she spotted an envelope taped to the door with her name typed on it. She tucked it under her arm and tried to unlock the door. After several attempts, the key wouldn't fit. She started trembling, dropped her bag, and sat down in one of the Adirondack chairs on the porch. She ripped open the envelope and soon burst into tears. Mrs. Benton, this letter informs you that your husband, Will Benton, has retained me as his attorney. My client has learned that you are engaged in an adulterous and illicit sexual relationship with his business partner, Corey Parker. He knows you have not been to Lexington, Kentucky in recent days, but have in fact been in Charleston, South Carolina, with Mr. Parker. You should contact Mr. Benton through my office. He will provide evidence of his knowledge regarding your betrayal and your marriage to Mr. Parker. Mr. Benton has changed the locks on his house and asked that you find another place to live soon. As you recall, the mortgage is solely in his name, so you have no legal right to enter without his permission. Please do not try to contact my client. He will reach out to you through my office within the week for an initial discussion about separation and divorce. Mr. Benton will allow you to enter the house under supervision to collect your personal belongings tomorrow morning. Again, please communicate with me, not Mr. Benton, to arrange this. I strongly recommend that you seek legal counsel. When you do, please provide them with my name and contact information. Mr. Benton has assured me that there are sufficient funds in your joint account to cover immediate expenses, such as accommodation. If necessary, please use your Bank of America debit card, as all co-branded credit cards have been paid off and canceled. He suggested that it may be in your best interest to ask Mr. Parker if you could stay with him. Sincerely, Edward M. Simmons, attorney, Simmons and Wyckoff. It took Ellie a few minutes to regain her composure. She began trying to call Will, ignoring or forgetting the instructions she had just read. 5 minutes later, she received a text message from Ed Simmons. Mrs. Benton, I urge you to respect my client's wishes and not attempt to contact him directly. Ellie stared at the message on her screen. Across town, Corey Parker arrived at his condominium. where he also received a letter from Simmons and Wyckoff. To Mr. Corey Parker, from Edward Simmons, attorney Simmons and Wyckoff, my client, your business partner, Mr. William J. Benton, has learned that you are engaged in illicit sexual relations with his wife, which constitutes adultery. An initial financial audit conducted by Randolph Michaels, CPA, has revealed that company funds were used to cover at least 8 meetings between you and Mrs. Eleanor Benton in violation of the law. To avoid both criminal and civil prosecution, my client, Mr. Benton, wishes to negotiate the dissolution of the partnership and the purchase of your 50% stake in the company. It is advisable that you seek legal and financial counsel regarding this matter. Please do not contact my client directly. Direct all communications to me at my email, edesw.com. Any violation of this request will lead to immediate legal action against you. Corey cursed himself. Damn, how many times have I taken Ellie with me and labeled it as entertainment expenses for clients? He realized he had already electronically submitted about $1,000 from last weekend to the accountant for reimbursement. He knew Will rarely scrutinized expenses closely, and Diana, the accountant, had no reason to suspect anything amiss. The annual independent audit was completed 2 weeks ago, with no discrepancies found. The total amount couldn't be more than a few $1,000s. But there's definitely something here that a snake like Michaels could have uncovered. He spent the rest of the night drinking, trying to figure out how to establish a perimeter defense. He found it easier to drink bourbon than to plan his next steps. Ellie had called and texted him more than a dozen times that evening, but he ignored every message. Damn it, I have a huge problem. Handle your issues and leave me alone, he thought, frustrated by the situation. How quickly the shaky foundation of a relationship built on lust can crumble. Ellie sat on her porch, dazed and in shock. Somehow her husband had learned much more than she ever gave him credit for. Her lover, whom she now reluctantly referred to as such, was ignoring her calls and messages. I see where I stand with him now, she muttered under her breath. Bastard. If Ellie had ever truly considered it, she would have realized that while Corey might be good at business and a solid friend during easy times, he was never the type to put himself in jeopardy for her. Tears began streaming down her cheeks again. I betrayed the man who would die for me, for a bastard who doesn't care about me, she whispered to herself, filled with regret. Meanwhile, in the guest cottage by the heated pool at Ed Simmons' house, Will and Ed were finalizing their plans. Will knew he had made the right choice in hiring Ed Simmons. On Sunday evening, Ed gathered another senior partner, 2 junior associates, and a counterpart to discuss strategy. Will couldn't shake the thought. This is going to cost me a fortune. Yet he smiled. Better to spend money this way than to lose it all to a cheating wife. Ed reassured Will that both Ellie and Corey would soon realize the seriousness of the situation and would likely hire their own lawyers. Their first responses will be denials, easily countered by our evidence, or attempts to save face, Ed explained. He encouraged Will to stick to his regular routine and be patient. I doubt we'll have any updates until midweek, Ed advised. So go to work, keep a low profile, avoid strangers, and don't take candy from anyone in a suspicious van. He laughed, hugging Will tightly. Don't worry, son. You're in good hands with Simmons, and Wyckoff. Will hesitated to go home, fearing Ellie might be waiting on his porch with her usual excuses. It's not what it seems. It didn't mean anything. Scenarios played in his head, but Ed was one step ahead. After a brief call, Ed turned to Will with a grin. One of my guys just drove by your house and told her to leave because she was trespassing. Will raised his eyebrows. She tried to act indignant, saying she was waiting for her husband, but my guy suggested she could enter if it was her house. That's when she got furious. Ed chuckled. He pretended to call the police loud enough for her to hear. She left quickly after that. Will smiled at the thought, though it was a sad one. Stupid witch, he muttered. In the following days, Will followed his lawyer's advice closely. By Tuesday, he changed his phone number because Ellie couldn't grasp that he didn't want to talk to her anymore. The office atmosphere was tense. Corey avoided Will, working from home on his lawyer's advice. You don't want to appear pushy, was the guidance. We'll value honesty, he told the small group, mentioning a disagreement he and Corey were resolving. He assured everyone that the issues would be temporary, though whether he believed that was questionable. Ellie continued working at the stables, but was so distracted that her employer asked if something was wrong. She explained that she and Will were having issues. Without going into detail, her boss, Stephanie, hugged her and encouraged her to hang in there. Ellie struggled to find competent legal representation. Lawyers wanted the facts up front. and it was clear there was little chance of a significant payout. The first two lawyers dropped her case. Eventually, she turned to a personal injury lawyer named Seth Moore, who assured her he had handled tougher cases and could secure a substantial settlement. He hoped she would have enough to cover his fees and maybe some left over for a night out at his favorite nightclub. Neither Seth nor Corey's lawyer, James Abernathy, had much time. Ed Simmons, a respected trial lawyer, pushed for a quick hearing after Ellie was served a summons 2 days after returning home. Abernathy knew he wasn't holding a winning hand, and that dragging the case out was beyond his client's finances. By the end of the second week, he advised Corey to offer to sell his share of the business at a reduced price to give him time to recover and pay his legal fees. Corey authorized an offer of $0.80 on the dollar. Simmons received this and suggested Will counter with 10 cents on the dollar. "We'll probably end up around 30, he said. Abernathy knows the situation but will still negotiate hard. Will wanted Corey to feel the pain. 10 cents on the dollar would bring him back to his financial starting point. But Will knew he needed to heat his lawyer. Getting 30 cents on the dollar would put Corey in a tough spot. He'd leave the rest to fate, or a later time. 3 days later, Ed conveyed the deal to Will. 28 cents on the dollar, he said over the phone. Not as much as you hoped, but still a solid win. Will thanked him. Ed then addressed a key issue. Will, you need to talk to Ellie. The judge will want to know you tried to communicate with her. Even if divorce is your goal, having answers before the judge asks is always better. We had Judge Kim Landy on our divorce case. It could be better or worse, but it's manageable. She has strict rules about resolution, so she'll want to know about counseling, possibly even requesting it. I won't bore you with details, but it's time to talk. I'll arrange everything. We'll start with the lawyers, but then it's wise to meet alone. Show you can have a calm conversation, even in pain. It helps our case and shows you're reasonable. Will lowered his head, knowing Ed was right, but dreading it. Okay, Ed, you're right. Arrange the meeting. Ed looked at his young client with sympathy, recalling his own heartbreak. He had paid for college with an NROC scholarship and served as a first lieutenant during the First Gulf War. Back home, his love, Becky, decided not to wait for him. Ed was devastated, but he moved on with support from friends and family. He believed Will would be okay eventually, and that he would be better off without his cheating wife. But now wasn't the time to share that. Ed needed to be there for him. He might be tough, but he had a big heart. The meeting was set for noon the following Friday. Ed wanted Will to have the weekend to recover from the tough days ahead. Both sides agreed to spend the first 30 minutes with their lawyers, then have private time for Will and Ellie. Ellie and Seth arrived on time, with Seth in an off-the-rack suit from JCPenney. Ellie wore a modest light blue dress, a burgundy sweater, and her hair in a ponytail with Michael Kors glasses. Ed and Will stood as they entered the private conference room at Simmons, and Wickoff, ensuring the other party had to walk through several lobbies. Ed wanted more to understand what he was up against. He knew Seth's office was cramped, with 3 chairs at a desk from IKEA owned by his assistant, part-time dancer Molly. Will had always been drawn to Ellie, and seeing her now brought a lump to his throat. Despite her betrayal, she still seemed beautiful to him. He managed a polite smile, but avoided any affectionate gaze. "It's good to see you, Will," she said, studying him closely, perhaps trying to sense any lingering feelings. Will nodded. "Ellie, thanks for coming." Ed maintained his poker face, but thought, "Good job, guy. Don't show her anything." "Shall we begin?" he asked, gesturing to the chairs. "Yes, thank you," Seth responded quickly, likely eager to gain an advantage. "My client agreed to this meeting to understand what her husband is proposing to save their marriage," Seth declared, trying to sound assertive. Ed interrupted, pulling a 6-inch folder from the end of his desk and sliding it across the table toward Seth. "What's this?" Seth asked, eyeing the folder suspiciously. "I'm not sure we're ready to accept any documents today," he added, his uncertainty evident. Ed leaned forward. "This is about 50% of our evidence. It demonstrates your client's adultery and betrayal of her marriage vows." He pointed to the folder. "We've omitted unnecessary details to avoid repetition. Inside, you'll find recordings and photographs of your client's sexual encounters with Mr. Corey Parker in Charleston, South Carolina 3 weeks ago. We also have testimonies from hotel staff who saw your client register under false names as husband and wife with Mr. Parker. These meetings occurred over 6 months, and our investigation provides only verifiable facts." Seth turned pale while Ellie's reaction was more intense. She tensed, realizing the extent of the evidence against her. She winced, picturing people seeing photos of her private moments that had once felt thrilling but now seemed cheap and shameful. Without missing a beat, Ed slid a second thinner folder across the table. "This is my client's proposal for a divorce settlement." He looked at Ellie. "Personally, I think the terms are quite generous. If it were up to me, I'd take this directly to the judge and show her the extent of your betrayal, Mrs. Benton. However, Will, being the honorable man he is, insisted I present this offer first." Ellie appeared defeated, and Seth, clearly outmatched, shuffled in his seat. Ed knew they wouldn't reach an agreement today, but with the initial hearing just 2 weeks away, there would be room for bargaining. Will's offer was tough, but fair. A lump sum payment of $75,000 if Ellie agreed to relinquish her stake in the business. She would waive all future claims and split the proceeds from the house sale. Ellie could keep her car, but would start paying for its upkeep a month after the divorce. She could take any furniture except the wedding bed and a set of antique rocking chairs from Will's grandmother. She could also keep her jewelry, except for the engagement and wedding rings, which were to be returned upon finalizing the divorce. Lastly, she had to acknowledge that her adultery was the reason for the divorce. Seth, trying to sound assertive, replied, "My client and I will review this offer and provide a counter by early next week. However, Mrs. Benton will not agree to her husband's demand for the return of the rings." Ed remained calm, though his anger was evident. He leaned in, voice steely. "Seth, we both know your client has repeatedly violated her marriage vows with full awareness of the harm she caused my client. If you want to play this out in front of Judge Landy, go ahead. I'd welcome the chance to see you squirm in her courtroom." Seth fell silent, his bravado fading. Ed continued, "But let me be clear. If you push for more, we will make all this public at trial. You have until Tuesday afternoon to respond. After that, this offer is off the table and we'll see you in court." Seth hesitated, but even he knew Ed held all the cards. The settlement, while harsh, was also a lifeline for Seth. He stood to make $10,000 from the case, more than he typically earned in 2 months. The tension was thick, but the meeting was effectively over. Ed stood and buttoned his jacket. "Let's give the Bentons some time to talk privately." Seth stood and shook hands with Ed, offering the obligatory, "We'll be in touch." After the lawyers left, an awkward silence filled the room. Will looked at Ellie, waiting for her to speak. As the aggrieved party, he recalled Ed advising him not to speak first. Ellie stared at the floor, nervously twisting her fingers in her lap. Finally, she spoke, her voice soft and trembling. "I have no excuses, Will. If I could take it all back, I would. My actions have hurt you deeply, and I'll carry that guilt for the rest of my life. Saying I'm sorry or that it was just Zex would be disrespectful, but I need you to know how deeply I regret it." Will's expression remained cold. "Believe what you want, Ellie. It doesn't matter to me anymore." Her eyes filled with desperation. "Is there any hope for us, Will? Could we get through this with counseling? I don't want a divorce. I never did. I'll do anything. Just please. Let's stay together." Will clenched his jaw, fighting to contain his anger. How could she ask this of him now, after everything? Taking a deep breath, he forced himself to stay calm. "If the court requires counseling, I'll go." Ellie's eyes briefly flickered with hope, but Will crushed it. "But know this. I don't want to be with you, ever again. I loved you and gave you everything, my heart, mind, and soul, and you repaid me by sleeping with my best friend. I don't even know who you are anymore, Ellie, other than a cheap woman. I'll never touch you again or have children with you. You want forgiveness? You lost that the moment you slept with Corey?" Ellie paled, shaken by his words. "Will, do you really hate me that much?" He didn't hesitate. "Yes, Ellie, today I do." His voice was cold, heavy with finality. "You've only ever thought of yourself. I want to feel nothing for you. You're not worth the pain anymore." Ellie sat in stunned silence, realizing her last attempts had failed. She tried a few more times, offering promises of Zex, swearing off Corey, even suggesting therapy to understand her choices. But Will had shut down. Nothing she said reached him. After half an hour, the conversation ended. As Ellie stood to leave, she turned to him one last time. "Will you walk me to the car? Just one last moment together?" Will shook his head. "Go on your own, Ellie. Or better yet, call Corey and have him pick you up. Crawl back into bed with him for all I care. We're done." He walked away but paused at the door, turning to her with a bitter smile. "We had everything, Ellie, and you threw it away. But I'll give Corey credit. He must be one hell of a lover." Over the next few days, Seth Moore, the lawyer, struggled to get Simmons to concede points in the divorce suit. After the second conversation, Simmons stopped returning his calls. With the Tuesday deadline approaching, Ellie realized she had little chance of getting more than what Will offered. Corey finally called her on Monday, suggesting they meet for comfort. Desperate for affection, Ellie agreed to meet him at his condominium. She arrived at 8 p.m. and stayed the night, having sex several times. Corey treated her like a plaything, and she accepted it. It was pathetic, but it was her choice. Meanwhile, Simmons had an investigator outside Corey's place, recording her comings and goings. When she left in the morning, it was clear she had been taken advantage of. Her mascara and lipstick smudged, looking cheap and used. The investigator chuckled and passed the evidence to Simmons, and Wyckoff. Later that morning, as Ed reviewed the file with an assistant, he muttered, "Nobody could be that stupid." When Ellie returned to her studio apartment, she called Moore and told him to accept the divorce petition without modifications. He tried to argue, but she hung up. The day of the first hearing arrived, and Judge Landis was as strict as everyone had said. She examined both sides, asking leading questions. Moore looked like a man in a sinking raft with sharks circling him. Despair was the only fitting word for his case. Simmons was under scrutiny too, but he was impeccably prepared, providing answers before being asked and presenting ample evidence. Judge Landis asked the couple several questions. Will was well prepared, while Ellie was not. At the end of the hearing, Judge Landis stated, "The evidence in this case is overwhelming. While every difficult marriage has two sides, Mrs. Benton, I see no good reason for your decision to leave your husband for Mr. Parker. As I understand it, he even sold his share of the business for almost nothing, which confirms my view. I usually recommend counseling, but your cruel betrayal makes reconciliation impossible. I urge you to carefully reconsider your choices and focus on living your best life on your own. Mr. Benton's divorce claim and its terms are granted. The marriage is dissolved. Court is adjourned." There were no celebratory hugs or applause from Will. He and Ed discreetly shook hands. Seth Moore quickly retreated, leaving Ellie at the table. She stood up and exited the courtroom completely alone. Will began his new life, alone and in pain, but knowing he wasn't broken. 5 months after finalizing his divorce, Corey left his condominium and apparently slipped, falling down 3 flights of stairs. He spent 3 weeks in the hospital afterward with a blood alcohol level of 0.15, nearly double the legal limit. He didn't remember the fall. His insurance expired while he was job hunting, and his hospital bills drained his savings. Will learned about the incident during a trip to Smoky Mountain National Park and smiled to himself, thinking couldn't happen to a better guy. The police investigated and found that Corey had a visitor that evening, Ms. Ellie Shriver. Detectives uncovered clear evidence that they were lovers, but it also turned out Corey had another relationship on the side. Ellie was convicted of felony attack and sentenced to 3 years in prison. It was a harsh experience. To this day, Corey walks with a noticeable limp and works in technical support for a local college.